The aroma of freshly brewed coffee usually filled our apartment on Sunday mornings, a comforting ritual that marked the start of our shared week. Anya would be humming some obscure melody, sunlight catching the strands of her auburn hair as she moved around the kitchen, a picture of domestic tranquility. But this Sunday, the silence felt thick, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Anya sat by the window, a book open in her lap, but her gaze was fixed on something beyond the glass, a distant, unfocused look in her usually vibrant green eyes. She hadn't touched her coffee, which had grown cold on the table beside her. I tried to bridge the growing distance between us, attributing her quietness to stress from work, maybe a touch of the seasonal blues. But the feeling persisted, a nagging unease that settled in the pit of my stomach and refused to dissipate. It was like a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a change in the air pressure that hinted at an approaching storm. I'd reach out to her, a casual touch on her arm, a gentle inquiry about her day, but my gestures were met with a polite but distant smile, a brush-off that left me feeling more alone than ever. This morning, I'd woken before her, hoping to surprise her with breakfast in bed. I'd carefully arranged a tray with her favorite pastries, a small vase of lilies, and a steaming mug of her special blend of Earl Grey tea. I'd even written a silly little note, a reminder of our first date, a shared joke that always brought a smile to her lips. But when I entered the bedroom, she was already gone, leaving behind only the indentation of her body on the mattress and the lingering scent of her jasmine perfume. Now, sitting across from her at the kitchen table, the untouched breakfast growing cold between us, I felt a familiar wave of anxiety wash over me. Her book remained open in her lap, its pages unturned. She hadn't acknowledged my presence, hadn't even glanced in my direction. It was as if I'd become invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of her world. "Anya," I began, my voice a hesitant whisper. "Is everything all right?" She finally looked up, her green eyes meeting mine, but there was a guardedness in them, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. "Yes, Elias," she replied, her voice flat, devoid of its usual warmth. "Everything is fine." But it wasn't. I knew it in the silence that stretched between us, in the way she avoided my gaze, in the subtle tension that radiated from her like a low hum. Something had changed. Something was different. And the whispers of doubt that had been circling in my mind for weeks now began to coalesce into a chilling certainty. I was losing her. The following weeks unfolded like a slow-motion nightmare. The vibrant tapestry of our shared life began to unravel thread by thread, leaving behind a frayed and faded remnant of what once was. Anya's withdrawal deepened, a silent chasm widening between us with each passing day. Our conversations dwindled to polite exchanges about the weather or mundane details of daily life. The laughter that once filled our apartment was replaced by an uncomfortable quiet, a heavy silence that pressed down on me, suffocating me with its unspoken weight. I tried desperately to bridge the growing divide. I suggested date nights, hoping to rekindle the spark that had once burned so brightly between us. We went to our favorite Italian restaurant, the place where I'd proposed, but the atmosphere felt strained, forced. Anya's smile never quite reached her eyes, and her attention seemed to drift away, lost in some distant, private world. We took long walks in the park, hand in hand as we used to do, but her hand felt limp in mine, unresponsive. The comfortable silence we once shared was now filled with an unsettling tension, a palpable sense of disconnection. At night, our bed, once a sanctuary of intimacy and shared dreams, became a battleground of unspoken anxieties. Anya would turn away from me, her back a solid wall separating us. I'd lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with unanswered questions. What had I done wrong? What had changed? Was there someone else? The thought, once a fleeting whisper, now echoed in my mind like a deafening roar. I scrutinized every interaction, every word, every gesture, searching for a clue, a sign, anything that could explain the change in her. I noticed subtle shifts in her routine. She started staying late at work more often, offering vague explanations about deadlines and projects. She began spending more time on her phone, her fingers dancing across the screen, her face illuminated by its soft glow. She'd quickly turn it away if I entered the room, a fleeting glimpse of something I wasn't meant to see. My once unwavering trust in her began to erode, replaced by a gnawing suspicion that gnawed at my insides. I felt like a stranger in my own home, a spectator in my own life. The woman I loved, the woman I'd built my life with, was slipping away from me, and I was powerless to stop it. The whispers of change had become a deafening chorus, a constant reminder of the growing distance between us, a stark premonition of the heartbreak to come. I felt like I was standing on the edge of an abyss, the ground crumbling beneath my feet, and I knew with a chilling certainty that I was about to fall. It was a seemingly insignificant detail, a fleeting scent, that shattered the last vestiges of my denial. Anya had come home late from work again, her apologies perfunctory, her explanation vague. She'd brushed a kiss against my cheek, a gesture that felt more like an obligation than affection, and retreated to the shower. I remained in the living room, the silence amplifying the hollowness I felt inside. I picked up the book she'd left on the coffee table, its pages still open to the same passage she'd been reading days ago. I tried to focus on the words, but they swam before my eyes, meaningless symbols on a page. Anya emerged from the shower, wrapped in her bathrobe, the scent of her usual lavender soap filling the air. But beneath the familiar fragrance, I detected something else, a faint, musky scent that I couldn't quite place. It was a masculine scent, subtle yet distinct, lingering in the air like a phantom presence. It clung to her clothes, her hair, her skin. It was the scent of another man. The realization hit me like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole my breath. My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of Anya, my Anya, with the implications of this foreign scent. The whispers of doubt that had haunted me for weeks now coalesced into a stark, undeniable truth. She was seeing someone else. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, suffocating. I stood there, frozen, the book slipping from my grasp and falling to the floor with a dull thud. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I stumbled back, clutching at the edge of the coffee table for support. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching this scene unfold from a distance, a detached observer of my own unraveling. Anya glanced at me, her eyes widening slightly, a flicker of surprise, or perhaps guilt, crossing her face. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. She simply stood there, wrapped in her bathrobe, the scent of another man clinging to her like a shroud. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken accusations and shattered trust. The world I thought I knew, the world I had built with Anya, crumbled around me, reduced to dust and ashes. The scent of another man, a fleeting, almost imperceptible detail, had exposed the gaping chasm that had opened between us, a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion, a nagging doubt. It was a stark, undeniable reality, a wound that cut deep, leaving me bleeding and broken. The scent of another man had become the final, devastating confirmation of my worst fears. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and pain. I moved through life in a daze, a ghost haunting the shell of my former self. The scent of another man lingered in our apartment, a constant reminder of Anya's betrayal. I found myself searching for it everywhere, in her hair, on her clothes, in the air she breathed. It was a phantom scent, elusive yet ever-present, a tormenting reminder of the intimacy she shared with someone else. Anya continued her charade, her demeanor a carefully constructed mask of normalcy. She went about her daily routine, her smiles and apologies hollow, her explanations vague and unconvincing. She spoke of work deadlines, of errands, of fatigue, anything to deflect my suspicions. But her eyes, once filled with warmth and affection, now held a flicker of guilt, a hint of unease that betrayed her carefully crafted facade. I watched her, my heart aching with a mixture of love and resentment. I longed to confront her, to demand answers, to tear down the wall of deception she had built around herself. But fear held me back, a paralyzing fear of the truth, of the confirmation of my worst fears. I clung to a sliver of hope, a desperate wish that I was wrong, that my suspicions were unfounded, that the scent of another man was just a figment of my imagination. But deep down I knew the truth. The evidence was all around me, in her distant gaze, in her evasive answers, in the subtle changes in her behavior. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted with my life, had become a stranger, a skilled actress playing a role she no longer believed in. The intimacy we once shared had been replaced by a cold, calculated performance, a carefully orchestrated dance of deception. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, trapped in a web of lies and betrayal. The walls seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with their silence. I longed to escape, to run away from the pain, but I was paralyzed by indecision, by the fear of the unknown. I was lost in a labyrinth of my own making, with no way out, no escape from the torment that consumed me. The mask of deception Anya wore was a constant reminder of the love we had lost, the trust that had been shattered, the life that had been irrevocably broken. The truth, as it often does, revealed itself in the most unexpected way. It was a Friday evening, and Anya had informed me that she would be working late again. I'd nodded, feigning understanding, while inside, a storm of emotions raged. Resignation, anger, and a profound sadness battled within me. I decided to go for a walk, hoping the cool night air would clear my head. As I wandered aimlessly through the city streets, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Anya, a text message flashing on the screen. Running later than expected. Don't wait up. I typed a curt, okay, and slipped the phone back into my pocket, the familiar pang of loneliness hitting me. I found myself drawn to a small, dimly lit bar I'd never noticed before. The warm glow emanating from the windows seemed to beckon me, promising a temporary escape from my troubled thoughts. I stepped inside, the noise and laughter washing over me like a wave. I found a seat at the bar and ordered a whiskey, the amber liquid burning a comforting path down my throat. As I sat there, nursing my drink, lost in my thoughts, I heard a familiar laugh. It was Anya's laugh, unmistakable in its melodic quality. I turned, my heart pounding in my chest, and there she was, seated in a booth at the back of the bar, her face animated, her eyes sparkling with a joy I hadn't seen in months. And beside her, his arm draped possessively around her shoulders, was a man I didn't recognize. He was tall and well-built, with dark hair and a confident smile. He leaned in close to Anya, whispering something in her ear, and she laughed again, a carefree, uninhibited laugh that pierced me like a knife. They were engrossed in each other, oblivious to the world around them, their intimacy a stark contrast to the distance that had grown between Anya and me. I sat there, frozen in place, my drink forgotten, watching them. The scene unfolded before me like a slow-motion film, each gesture, each touch, a confirmation of my worst fears. The scent of another man, the late nights at work, the evasive answers, all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, forming a clear, undeniable picture of Anya's betrayal. The accidental discovery was like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. The pain was unbearable, a raw, visceral ache that spread through my entire being. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly alone. The world I thought I knew, the life I had built with Anya, shattered into a million pieces, leaving me standing amidst the wreckage, lost and broken. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen in place, watching Anya and her lover. Time seemed to stand still, each second an eternity of pain and disbelief. The whiskey in my glass remained untouched, the ice melting slowly, diluting the amber liquid. Finally, I forced myself to move, my legs feeling heavy and unsteady. I paid for my drink and walked towards their booth, each step a monumental effort. As I approached, Anya looked up, her smile fading as she recognized me. Her eyes widened in shock, her face paling. The man beside her turned, his expression a mixture of surprise and annoyance. "Elias," Anya stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" The question hung in the air, heavy with irony. What was I doing here? I was here to confront the woman I loved, the woman who had betrayed me in the most devastating way. I was here to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "I think you know why I'm here, Anya," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The man beside her shifted uncomfortably, his hand tightening on Anya's shoulder. "Look, pal," he began, his voice laced with arrogance. "I don't know who you are, but—" I cut him off, my gaze fixed on Anya. "This doesn't concern you," I said coldly. "This is between Anya and me." Anya looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "Elias, I can explain," she mumbled. "Explain what, Anya?" I asked, my voice rising in anger. "Explain why you've been lying to me for weeks? Explain why you're here with him, laughing and smiling, while I'm at home, wondering where you are, wondering what you're doing." The words tumbled out of me, fueled by months of suppressed emotions. The pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, all poured out in a torrent of accusations. Anya remained silent, her head bowed, her shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. The man beside her looked on, his expression shifting from annoyance to concern. "Just tell me one thing, Anya," I said, my voice breaking. "Do you love him?" She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her silence was all the answer I needed. I turned and walked away, leaving them there, amidst the noise and laughter of the bar. The confrontation was over, but the pain remained, a gaping wound in my heart that would take a long time to heal. The truth was out in the open, but it offered no solace, only a confirmation of the devastating reality of my broken life. I walked for hours that night, the city lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of colors. The cool night air did little to soothe the burning anger and pain that raged within me. Each step was an effort, my body heavy with exhaustion and despair. I didn't know where I was going, nor did I care. All I wanted was to escape the suffocating reality of my broken life. When I finally returned to our apartment, the first rays of dawn were painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange. The apartment was silent, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Anya's belongings were gone. Her suitcase, which she always kept tucked away in the closet, was missing. The photos that adorned our walls, capturing moments of shared joy and laughter, were gone too, leaving behind empty spaces that echoed the emptiness in my heart. I wandered through the apartment, my fingers tracing the outlines of the missing photos, the ghost of Anya's presence lingering in the air. The scent of another man, faint but still perceptible, clung to the furniture, the curtains, the very walls of our home. It was a cruel reminder of the intimacy they shared, the life they were building together while I was left behind, a discarded relic of a forgotten past. I went to the bedroom, the bed neatly made, the pillows plumped. There was no trace of Anya, no lingering scent of her perfume, no indentation on the mattress where her body had lain. It was as if she had never been there, as if our life together had been nothing more than a dream, a figment of my imagination. The emptiness of the apartment was overwhelming, a physical manifestation of the void in my soul. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, my knees drawn up to my chest. Tears streamed down my face, hot and salty, a release of the pent-up emotions that had been suffocating me. I had lost everything. The woman I loved, the home we had built together, the future we had planned. All gone, vanished like smoke in the wind. I was alone, adrift in a sea of pain and despair, with no anchor, no compass, no direction. The empty apartment was a constant reminder of my loss, a stark symbol of the life that had been stolen from me. The following weeks were a blur of darkness and despair. I moved through life like an automaton, going through the motions of daily existence without any real sense of purpose or direction. Work became a refuge, a place where I could lose myself in the mindless routine of tasks and deadlines. But even there, the pain followed me, a constant shadow lurking in the corners of my mind. I stopped taking care of myself. Meals were forgotten, replaced by a steady diet of takeout and convenience food. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by restless nights filled with nightmares and flashbacks of Anya and her lover. The apartment, once a haven of comfort and warmth, became a prison, a constant reminder of my loss. I avoided it as much as possible, spending my evenings wandering aimlessly through the city streets, seeking solace in the anonymity of the crowd. Alcohol became my only companion, a temporary anesthetic that numbed the pain, albeit at a heavy cost. The initial euphoria quickly gave way to a deeper despair, a sense of hopelessness that clung to me like a shroud. I started frequenting the same dimly lit bar where I had discovered Anya with her lover, seeking refuge in the familiar surroundings, the comforting anonymity of the crowd. I'd sit at the bar, nursing a drink, watching the people come and go, their laughter and conversations a distant echo in my ears. One night, fueled by alcohol and despair, I decided to confront Anya's lover. I found him at the same bar, seated at the same booth, this time with another woman. He didn't recognize me at first, his eyes glazed with alcohol. But when I spoke his name, his face paled, a flicker of fear crossing his eyes. "You," he said, his voice slurred. "What do you want?" "I want you to leave her alone," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I want you to stay away from her." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "And what if I don't?" he challenged. I lunged at him, my fists clenched, but he was quicker. He dodged my attack and pushed me back, sending me stumbling against the bar. I fell to the floor, my head hitting the hard tile with a sickening thud. The world spun around me, the noise and laughter fading into a distant hum. I lay there for a moment, dazed and disoriented. Then, slowly, I got to my feet, my head throbbing, my vision blurred. The bartender rushed over, his face etched with concern. "Are you all right, sir?" he asked. I nodded, brushing him off. I turned and walked out of the bar, leaving behind the chaos and the noise, the laughter and the pain. I stumbled through the streets, my body aching, my mind numb. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I was lost, adrift in a sea of despair, with no hope of rescue. The descent into darkness had begun. They say that the human mind is capable of remarkable things, of adapting to even the most traumatic experiences. But in the aftermath of Anya's departure, my mind seemed to be playing tricks on me. It was as if a part of me was still expecting her to walk through the door, to fill the apartment with her laughter and warmth. I'd catch myself setting an extra place at the table, or leaving her favorite mug on the counter. I'd hear her voice in the rustling of leaves outside the window, or the creak of the floorboards in the hallway. The phantom limb syndrome, they called it, a phenomenon where amputees continue to feel sensations in a limb that is no longer there. In my case, it wasn't a physical limb that was missing, but a part of my soul, a part of my being that had been ripped away from me. Anya was gone, but her absence was so profound, so all-consuming, that it felt like a physical presence, a phantom limb that ached with a constant, unrelenting pain. I tried to distract myself, to fill the void with other things. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects, working late into the night. I started going to the gym, pushing my body to its limits, hoping to exhaust myself to the point of numbness. I even tried dating again, forcing myself to go out with other women, hoping to find someone, anyone who could fill the void left by Anya. But it was no use. Every woman I met, every date I went on, only served to remind me of what I had lost. The laughter felt hollow, the conversations forced, the intimacy awkward and uncomfortable. I was haunted by the ghost of Anya, her memory a constant presence in my mind, a phantom limb that ached with a longing that could never be satisfied. The phantom limb syndrome wasn't just a mental phenomenon. It was a physical sensation too. I felt her absence in the empty space beside me in bed, in the silence of the apartment, in the lack of her warmth against my skin. It was a constant reminder of my loss, a physical manifestation of the emptiness that consumed me. I knew I needed to move on, to let go of the past, to accept that Anya was gone and that my life would never be the same. But the phantom limb syndrome held me captive, a constant reminder of what I had lost, a cruel torment that prevented me from healing, from moving forward. I was trapped in a cycle of grief and despair, haunted by the ghost of Anya, the phantom limb that ached with a longing that could never be satisfied. It was a chance encounter, a fleeting moment of connection, that finally broke the spell of the phantom limb. I was at a coffee shop, lost in my thoughts, when I heard a voice, soft and melodic, asking if the seat opposite me was taken. I looked up, startled, and saw a woman, her eyes warm and inviting, a gentle smile playing on her lips. She introduced herself as Alara, and we fell into conversation as easily as two old friends. She was a photographer, she told me, her passion evident in the way her eyes lit up as she spoke about her work. We talked about art, about life, about the city, about everything and nothing. And for the first time in months, I felt a spark, a flicker of interest that wasn't tainted by the ghost of Anya. Alara was different from Anya in every way. Where Anya was fiery and impulsive, Alara was calm and thoughtful. Where Anya was outgoing and social, Alara was introspective and reserved. But there was a kindness in her eyes, a genuine warmth that drew me in, that made me feel seen and understood. We spent the rest of the afternoon together, wandering through the city, exploring hidden cafes and bookstores. We talked about our lives, our dreams, our fears. I told her about Anya, about the pain of her betrayal, the struggle to move on. Alara listened patiently, her eyes filled with compassion, her silence a comforting presence. As the day drew to a close, I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't experienced in months. Alara wasn't a replacement for Anya, nor was she a solution to my problems. But she was a catalyst, a spark that ignited a dormant part of me, a reminder that there was still beauty and connection to be found in the world. We parted ways with a promise to meet again, and as I walked home, I felt a lightness in my step, a sense of possibility that had been absent for far too long. The phantom limb was still there, the ache of Anya's absence still present. But it was fainter now, overshadowed by the burgeoning hope that Alara had ignited within me. The encounter was a turning point, a moment of grace that marked the beginning of my journey back to myself. My encounters with Alara became a regular occurrence. We'd meet for coffee, go for walks in the park, explore museums and art galleries. She had a way of seeing the world through a different lens, finding beauty in the mundane, meaning in the ordinary. She encouraged me to pick up my old hobbies, to rediscover the passions that had been neglected during my descent into despair. I started painting again, the colors and textures a welcome distraction from the turmoil in my mind. Slowly, gradually, the ice around my heart began to thaw. The phantom limb still ached, but the pain was less sharp, less insistent. The memories of Anya still surfaced, but they no longer held the same power over me. I was starting to remember who I was, the man I had been before the betrayal, the man I could be again. Alara didn't try to fix me, nor did she try to replace Anya. She simply offered her presence, her friendship, her unwavering support. She listened without judgment, offering gentle guidance when I needed it, but never pushing me further than I was ready to go. She helped me to see that my worth was not defined by my relationship with Anya, that I was valuable and deserving of love, regardless of what had happened in the past. One evening, as we were walking along the riverbank, watching the sun set over the city, Alara turned to me, her eyes filled with concern. "Elias," she said softly, "you're still holding on to a lot of anger. You need to let it go." I knew she was right. The anger was a poison, eating away at me from the inside. It was a barrier preventing me from healing, from moving forward. But letting go was easier said than done. The betrayal had cut deep, leaving scars that would take time to heal. "I know," I said, my voice heavy with regret, "but it's hard. I feel like I've been robbed, cheated out of a life that I thought was mine." Alara nodded understandingly. "I know it hurts," she said, "but holding on to the anger won't change anything. It will only keep you trapped in the past." She was right, of course. I needed to find a way to forgive, not for Anya's sake, but for my own. Forgiveness wasn't about condoning what she had done, but about releasing myself from the burden of anger and resentment. It was about reclaiming my power, my life, my future. The conversation with Alara was a turning point. It marked the beginning of a conscious effort to let go of the anger, to forgive Anya, and to finally move on. It was a slow and difficult process, but with Alara's support, I was starting to believe that it was possible. Months passed. The seasons changed, painting the city in hues of gold and crimson, then draping it in a blanket of white. With each passing day, the pain of Anya's betrayal faded a little more, replaced by a growing sense of peace and acceptance. My friendship with Alara deepened, evolving into something more profound, a connection that nourished my soul and filled my life with joy. One crisp autumn morning, I received an unexpected letter. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, a jolt to my heart that sent a shiver down my spine. It was from Anya. My initial reaction was a mix of confusion and apprehension. Why was she writing to me now after all this time? What did she want? I hesitated for a moment, the envelope trembling in my hand. Then, with a deep breath, I tore it open and began to read. The letter was filled with apologies and regrets. Anya wrote about the mistakes she had made, the pain she had caused. She spoke of her own struggles, the challenges she had faced in the aftermath of our separation. She didn't ask for forgiveness, nor did she try to justify her actions. She simply expressed her remorse, her hope that I was doing well, that I had found happiness. As I read the letter, a wave of emotions washed over me. Sadness, anger, pity, and a lingering sense of loss. But there was also a sense of closure, a feeling that a chapter of my life had finally come to an end. Anya's letter wasn't an attempt to rekindle our relationship, nor was it a plea for forgiveness. It was a farewell, a final goodbye from a woman who had once been the center of my world. I read the letter several times, each time with a different perspective, a different set of emotions. Then, I folded it carefully and tucked it away in a drawer, a memento of a love that had been lost, a reminder of the pain I had endured, and the strength I had found to overcome it. Anya's letter was a surprise, a twist in the narrative that I hadn't anticipated, but it was also a gift, a chance to finally let go of the past, to release the last vestiges of anger and resentment. It was a confirmation that I had moved on, that I had found healing and happiness, and that the future was filled with possibilities.